Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am very lucky today. I have Dr. Fred Bisci sitting across from me. Dr. Bisci is a clinical nutritionist with a PhD in nutritional science. He has seen over 35,000 clients in the last 45 years, Fred?
Almost 50 years now.
Almost 50 years. He is the author of Your Healthy Journey, but most notably, Fred is a pioneer in the raw foods and vegan movements. Personally choosing to eat a raw food diet for over 50 years, but I will preface this podcast by saying, because I know Fred would want me to, that in his practice, he doesn't work exclusively with raw foods. He works with people on many different levels. For the last 20 years, Fred has been, to me, a practitioner, a mentor, and a friend, and I'm so happy to have you on the show today, Fred. Thanks so much for being here with me.
It's an absolute pleasure, Mike. I enjoyed it so much when we get together and we just have the kind of conversations we've been having for years. I just love it. To me, it's more like recreation than anything else, because just be able to share ideas and experiences and life in general, the whole different aspects of life, which is so interesting. I'm not just really interested in food, but I'm interested in many different things that when you put them all together, we're talking about a person's life. Every day, we can learn something from somebody every single day. So I love doing this, and I was looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. You know, I was at your home with another good friend of ours, Chef Peter Savoni, and we were there a few weeks ago or about a month ago, and we were having amazing conversations where we spoke very little about nutrition, and we were talking about world issues and spirituality and old world New York and Staten Island, and I sort of want this podcast to be a continuation of that conversation, because it was fascinating. And when I talked to people and I told them that I'd been out at your place and we were hanging out and talking, and everybody said, they said, well, what did you guys talk about? Did you talk about spirituality? Because everybody knows that you're a very spiritual person. And that was sort of the most asked question about what our conversations were about. So I sort of want to pick it up with that. I think a good place to start, though, because I'm most fascinated by this. I had Gil Jacobs, who's also from Staten Island, as all three of us are.
We're all friends.
Yeah, and we talked about you a bit on the podcast, but I was really interested to understand about Gil, because he was it was in the 70s and 80s he started to experiment with vegetarianism and stuff, and we sort of had the same stomping ground, Staten Island. So I was thinking, when I was talking to him, we talked about what was that like? I mean, we're talking, 30, 40 years ago, and it's a very different world in the health food world. And a lot of these ideas are very, they were very fringe at the time, especially, and they were very radical.
Absolutely.
Took a tremendous leap of faith. So, I was really fascinated by by what awakened him to that, and, where he sort of found information with no internet. And, this was the days of health food stores where you would sit and, you'd have to look at these books written by these obscure authors. And, but then I was thinking last night about how we would start this conversation and what I wanted to know, and what I'd be most curious to know about you and your life and how it led you into a path of nutrition. And I mean, you went back 40 years pre-Gil in Staten Island. And,
Absolutely.
Generationally and geographically, it's very interesting that you would, at that time, be turned on to a raw food diet, a vegan diet. Those concepts were really fringe and really foreign. And
Absolutely.
right now they're widely accepted. And you were born in 1929 in Staten Island on farmland, yeah?
That's correct. Right. Well, I actually, we lived in Little Italy, I believe it was Mott Street in Manhattan. And right after my family moved to Staten Island, which was at the end of the Depression, I was about 2 or 3 years old. My mother and father rented a farm on Jewett Avenue. It was about an acre and a half. And believe it or not, I still remember a lot of things from my childhood. I remember my dog. I'm an animal lover. I had a German Shepherd named Roxy, which because I always adored animals. So we moved to Staten Island. And Staten Island was really a beautiful, pristine place. People, that remember it realize, what a beautiful, glorious place it was. The beaches were gorgeous. The South Beach Boardwalk had hotels on it. There was Mays Hotel, a couple of hotels. People used to come from all over, from South Jersey to Connecticut, come to Staten Island. There was at least 1,000 bungalows down there. And it was like something, for me growing up, it was like kind of like something out of the Godfather, if you know what I'm saying, because I came from an Italian family, and it was, Italian people in those days, they were all about family and being happiness. having, to enjoy happiness. And there was always somebody playing a mandolin or a guitar, and food was love in those days. It
It was like an Italian movie of old
was
Italy
like
or
an
something like
Italian
that. And
movie.
you had a farm. You probably grew a lot of the food. Did your mom grow a lot of her
My
own
mother
food?
grew a lot of the stuff. She made homemade wine, and there was 9 in my family. I don't remember one of my sisters. She died right around when I was born. She died from pneumonia. It was a tragic experience. And my mother, that's the story in itself. My mother had a gorgeous singing voice, and she was an only child from a fairly wealthy family in Italy. And she trained for the opera, so she used to sing all the time. And then the circumstances that my sister, her name was Lola, died under was very tragic because she had pneumonia. And in those days, I think they treated pneumonia with sulfur. And she had been through the crisis. The crisis was a point in pneumonia when you either died or you got better, and the doctor, it was pretty definitive. The doctor could tell where the crisis was. And what happened, she went through the crisis, and the doctor told my mother that Lela was going to be coming home in a day or two. And my mother had a very uncomfortable feeling. She says, I don't know, there's something wrong here. And she left, and my father says, oh, you're worried about, there's nothing to worry about. The doctor says that she's going to be fine. And my mother's intuition was obviously right because they got a phone call from St. Vincent's Hospital at 4 o'clock in the morning to come to the hospital. And the baby, she died on the potty. She was only 6 years old, I think, a very young baby. So I don't really remember that. And my mother died when a couple of weeks before 100 and first birthday. And I remember I was sitting with her once she was about 100, and we were up all night because she couldn't sleep. That's why I stayed with her. And she went through that whole story about the baby dying.
Wow.
She remembered everything.
Of course.
So I says, Mama, you still remember all that? She says, Freddie, when you lose a child, a woman never forgets it completely. It never really goes away. So we went through a lot of those things during the Depression. There wasn't a lot of work. There wasn't a lot of food. There was days that we didn't have food. My mother would say, "Oh, today's Friday." She says, "We're Catholics. We're not going to eat today. We're going to fast today." We didn't have anything to eat. And a lot of days we just ate polenta. My mother would buy cornmeal. It was very cheap. And my older brothers were really rugged guys, and they belonged to the CCCs and the WP.
What are those?
Civilian Conservation Corps. They used to go up into the Adirondacks and build roads, and their salary was pancakes and hash for the evening. They paid them, and I think they got like $1 or $2 a day or something like that.
What are we talking about? The 30s and 40s here?
Yeah, the 30s and the 40s. Basically the 30s. So it was, life was, there was a very good part of life then. Everybody, believe it or not, people were happy. They knew the real values. We didn't have a lot. A lot of the clothes we wore were hand-me-downs. The food we ate, we were basically, very, very healthy people because everything was real. A couple of my brothers could knock an oak tree down. They were so strong because everything we ate was real.
Yeah, old world
All the
nutrition,
food,
real food
right.
stuff.
And we used to get pheasants and rabbits,
You used to catch them on the island.
Yeah, my brother had a sawed-off shotgun, a little fuchetta they used to call it. And don't forget, we were all born at home. The whole family was born. My mother never went to a hospital. We were born at home. And there was an old Irish doctor lived on Khyber Court. His name was Dr. Roche. He had a handlebar mustache. He had a gray fedora. He always had it turned up. He carried a little black bag. And when my sister was born, was younger than me, it was an amazing story because my mother was cooking. She had this big belly. She was pregnant. And my father was sitting there all dressed up. My father was pretty much of a fancy dude. He was from Rome, Italy, and he always looked perfect.
Is that right? What did your father do for a living?
He was maitre d', and he was a head waiter in the Waldorf Astoria towards the end. But he was a maitre d' in a lot of speakeasies. I don't know if you ever heard of Texas Skyner and during the there was a lot of speakeasies during the end of the Depression. They wasn't selling liquor there at that time. If I remember I don't remember what the time frame was. So they had speakeasies where all the Dutch Schultz used to go in there, and all the gangsters were big spenders in there. So my father was, at that time, he started to make money at that time. But lo and behold, we didn't know what he was doing. We thought he wasn't making that much. But there was a period where he didn't make any money. But there was a very good part of life then. There was some wonderful memories there.
And you were talking about your mom having your sister in the house.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I never
So
forget. I could still see the inside of that house. You know, the, I know exactly where the stairs was, and you went to the left. There was the bedroom.
is that house still there?
No, it's
No,
gone.
okay.
They ripped down the whole farm. They built houses there. But I never forget. We're sitting at the bottom of the stairs. Of course, I always had a great memory. You know, since what happened, my little short-term memory is a little bit, you know, kind of. I lost a bit of it, but my long-term memory, I can remember everything. I can remember conversations. So I always remember my mother was cooking, and my mother said to my father, you know, turn the gas off, you know, and she said to one of my brothers, go get Dr. Roche. She said, because the baby's, I'm getting ready to have the baby. You know, who knows, you know what I mean? And my mother always said, you know, they don't know how to have babies in this country. My mother had all the babies squatting down. She never laid down. She said,
That's how the Maoris do it.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So what happened is that Dr. O'Shea was all for that, and here he comes Dr. O'Shea, this great old Irish doctor with this big gray mustache, his hat, and a little black thing, and he said, "Hey, Rosie," my mother's name was Rosie, and he said, "Hey, Rosie, you ready?" She said, "Yeah, I'm ready." So he said, "Okay, get me some white towels and you know, put some water on. Come on, Rosie, let's go upstairs." And so I was sitting at the bottom of the stairs. You know, I was about, I guess, about 4 or 5. So what happened? My mother goes upstairs, and she's upstairs, and in about 45 minutes, I hear a baby crying. That was my sister Gloria. And about and one of my brothers, oh, we got a baby sister. Oh, that's great. We got a baby sister, because we were all boys except for the girl that passed away. So what happens is that um,
So eight brothers.
Huh?
8 brothers, 1 sister, and one of your sisters.
7
passed
boys
away.
and 2
Oh,
girls.
7 boys and 2 girls.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she had, listen, my father was from Rome. I don't know what you know about Roman men. I think she had quite a few miscarriages. We would have had an army of kids. My father
A
came.
Roman army of children.
Right. My father came from a family of 22 children, two wives, 2 mothers, and my grandfather lived in the Vatican. What he did in there, I don't really know. But I saw a picture of him once. He had 1 arm. He looked like a soldier or something. So what happened is that a couple hours later, my father says to one of my brothers, "Go upstairs and get Mama." He said, "I'm hungry. I want to eat here." So about 2 or 3 hours. This is a true story. This is no exaggeration or distortion. About 3 hours later, here comes my mother walking downstairs. I'm telling you, comes walking downstairs. My mother put out dinner.
She had a baby and put out dinner
Right.
all in a 4-hour period.
Right.
Wow, fantastic.
And you know, and for days, you know, I was a kid. I didn't really know what was going wrong. But I mean, for days later, she was walking around. I would see blood on the floor. You know, she was just a strong, you know.
She just kept going. It doesn't happen that way anymore.
No. That's
No.
why I'm. You know, listen. I'll tell you the truth. I was glad I was brought up that way. We were brought up really tough.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And but my family tried to instill good values in us. You know, to be honest and to not to, you know, you see an elderly person, you know, carrying a heavy bag, to help them out. And my brothers always instilled in us to see if somebody was being taken advantage of or being picked on by a bully, to, you know, to step in. So that's what we always thought was the right thing to do. And we had a lot of great experiences. But with me, the hard part about things was, for me, is I couldn't read. And I always kind of slurred my words with this New York accent I had, but it was worse then. So it definitely had an effect on my self-esteem, because I had come to the conclusion that I was a pretty stupid guy, which, you know, I like to think I wasn't, of course.
Yeah, I think you proved everyone wrong with that one, Fred.
Yeah, so what happened is, you know, I didn't want to go to school, and I used to hide behind a store. When the bus used to come, I used to run out onto Victory Boulevard and make believe I was trying to catch the bus. Then I used to go home and say I missed the bus, because I didn't want to go to school, because somebody was going to ask me, you know, the teacher was going to ask me to stand up and read, which I definitely did not want to do, because my heart would start coming through my chest. So that started a whole thing with me about not going to school, and, you know, out into the street, and, going to the gyms and working out with the weights and,
Yeah, you
getting in.
really put your efforts into physical fitness at a point. I mean, I put a picture up on Instagram and Facebook a week ago, and everyone was amazed to see you were holding up your cell phone. You had a picture of you on a beach flexing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know what else to do with myself because I had no confidence in my intelligence. I didn't have any confidence at all. And the fact that I now, emotionally, psychologically, that's why when I work a lot of people, I believe in a whole lifestyle change because nutrition is a very small part of all this. Because I always ate fairly well. My mother always I always ate plenty of raw foods when we were kids. Fresh fruit and salad, that was part of our growing up. But the whole thing is emotionally, psychologically, psychosomatically induced issues, which I definitely had some, full of anger, you know what I mean? Very quiet and introverted. And if I saw anybody that I thought had anything going for them, or I thought they was an intelligent group of people having an intelligent conversation, I didn't want to reveal myself. I would just walk away. I would go someplace else. So I always hung out with, or I always socialized with the bad boys. The people that were,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
There's plenty of them on Staten
plenty of
Island.
them on Staten Island. And then even when I went to, with the Korean War, I think I was basically hoping to go, well, I don't know what I was hoping for, but I wanted to get into some dangerous part of the service because I was a physical person.
So you were in the Korean War?
In Korea. I ended up in the Navy because I wanted to. A friend of mine who was also a good athlete, he wanted to go into the paratroopers, and we were going to go in, and then somebody, I don't remember, it was my family, his family, said, don't, that's not a good idea, because, so then he decided we were going to go in to try to become Navy frogmen, and I think that he got turned down because of me, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, he definitely, he would have got into the training, whether he got through it or not, I don't really know, but when we got the recruiter, Navy recruiter said, you guys definitely gonna, candidates, because we were, we just, that's all we did was train,
Mm-hmm.
everything. And but somehow, when I was in boot camp and I got interviewed, the guy recognized that probably wasn't playing with a full deck at that time.
Is that right? You were that much of a wild card that they were like,
Yeah,
not
no,
even for the military.
no, they didn't really. They don't want people like that in that type of an outfit. So again, I viewed that as another failure in my life, But that all changed, and then I met this guy that was a black gentleman, and he
This
was
was your boxing coach.
yeah,
Yeah.
in Corpus Christi,
Corpus Christi, Texas?
Yeah, it was a Navy base there. I was working
Oh,
in the
I see.
gym.
Okay, good. I always envisioned this story because I knew that you met someone, you had a boxing coach. And I always just envisioned it in Brooklyn or in Staten Island or something. So this was in Texas.
Well, we had in those days in schools, like at PS11 schools, you had CYO and the PAL, and at night they always had recreational centers and they had punching bags and things like that. And of course, Mount Loretto and Staten Island had a lot of the kids went to Mount Loretto, and some of those kids were really, really tough. They come from up in the city, and they were from really messed up homes. And some of the guys that fought then, like there was one guy named Epi Alonso. He probably would have been a world champ professional fighter,
Hmm.
and he ended up a diabetic, and he had brittle hands. Something happened to him that wasn't good. He couldn't fight no more.
But
So,
you were so you had come out of boot camp.
well, I always trained, even in the service, because that was my that was my that was my mask. You know what I mean? That was my persona, the mask that I hid behind. So I wouldn't have to reveal myself. That I wasn't really a bright guy. So and I trained. I did everything. You forget it. I did it, and I devised a way of training was like an overload system that was trained with unbelievably heavy weights, which really made you super strong. My family was kind of gifted in that with strength, though. We were basically strong people. You know what I'm saying?
No, Roman Italians.
Yeah, so whatever that was. So, but I always trained very, very hard. We always ran every place. The guys I had around me were similar types of guys. We didn't even know we were poor, I mean, but we knew we were like a different class of people. Not that we were, None of the people I hung out were rude or crude or nasty. Wasn't that type of a thing. We were more envision ourselves to be stand-up people, that you didn't have to prove anything. You just kept your mouth shut. Then when you had to prove it, you would prove it. So
Hmm.
that was a different story, a whole different way of doing it. But when I come out of service, then I was always interested in nutrition. That's when I really started my nutritional journey. That's when I really started.
And this coach, this boxing coach that you had mentioned, he had something to do with that, or he had. I remember you were telling me that he was very instrumental in moving you
Yeah, well,
into a
he
new
was.
way of thinking.
Yeah, he was. I went to Catholic school before they threw me out. You know what I mean? So, and if you had asked me if I believed in God, I would have said, yeah, I think so, but I really didn't know what I believed in. So I really didn't have an actual experience, a personal relationship to be grounded spiritually. And he saw there was something wrong with me. He knew it. Not that I was a crazy person. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea, but he knew that once I could had an opportunity to unload my anger, my fury. It was, totally out of context, totally out of balance. So he probably thought I was a little off. I mean, there was things when we be sparring or something like that. I used to really
Get into it.
get into it, and it was really kind of foolish when I look back in it. But he was a great guy, fabulous guy, and he said, that's you can't walk around the way you are. He says, it's not a good idea. He says, not only it's not good for you, he says, this is not good for you. He says, but it's not good for, if you get into the wrong situation, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. And I really, you know, when he first told me that, and the way he told me about, you got to be grounded spiritually, you got to have a personal relationship with God, I actually got very angry with him, to be perfectly honest with you, because I thought he didn't have a clue what he was talking about. But then after, he handled me the way you should handle people like that. He never really preached to me. Was just he became a friend, what I mean? And he was obviously a very very wise person. He had a lot of wisdom. Wisdom and knowledge. Wisdom is understanding God's natural laws and how life really works. It's like the kind of like sacred geometry. There's always an underlying formula to science, and if you look at all the religious artifacts in cathedrals and churches and beautiful paintings, there's a lot of people talk about sacred geometry now. I was talking to Marcus about it, but even to understanding natural law, the human body, and how we should be living, the best way to live, it really is like there's like an underlying code, like a vitality code, a behavior code, the way we're supposed to it's the optimal way that we should be conducting ourselves. That's why what I believe about diet, I believe there's an optimal way for us to live besides diet. And, by leaving out all the processed food, I believe people can be healthy. You don't have to eat 100% raw, but there's an optimal way for us to behave. There's an optimal way for us to treat people with respect, unconditional love, kindness, generosity, empathy, and to have an attitude of gratitude no matter how bad off you are. I mean, if you're sitting in a cell in prison and you have some kind of a revelation and you have an attitude of gratitude that you're alive, you can change your life from that point on. People can change. I have no doubt when people say, oh, that person can't change. I don't believe that because I've seen some of um, the most problematic people change. And I also hear people say, oh, that person can't get better. I don't believe that. I believe everybody has a chance to get better. The human body has this fabulous ability to remedy itself, to heal. We are designed to heal. We are designed to replicate cells on a cellular level. We are a self-regenerating biological organism. We are designed to live much longer than most people realize. The only problem is we're being bathed in an environment that's contradictory to the way our chemistry is working, which is we're gonna have a problem with.
See, everything you just said is absolutely amazing, and you have 50 years of experience that brought you to this way of thinking. So let's go back 50 years because where was the first time you ever even started to look at these things and put together spirituality and clean eating or think about any of the concepts that you just talked about for the
Well,
last 5 minutes.
Mike, it's very hard to define at what point that happened, but I remember that um, my father, my father was a very tough guy. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? But when I say tough, he wasn't crude. He was quite a polished guy, uneducated, but spoke 5 languages fluently because he was in the hotel business. But he didn't he worked at those in those days. Jobs were hard to come by, and a lot of people lost money during the depression. A lot of people didn't have food, and a lot of people were suffering. And of course, in that type of environment, a lot of good people actually turned to some type of crime so they could feed their families and to live. So there was a lot of wasn't everything wasn't black and white. There was a lot of gray areas in there. There was things that people were willing to do, that good people were willing to do to survive. So there was a lot of things happening in at that time. But my dad, my father, he was always the type of guy. I mean, he smoked, but he was always the type of guy that believed in sunbathing. And I don't remember when, but he used to bring home this magazine called Physical Culture. And the editor was a guy by the name of Bernard McFadden. Now,
Hmm.
this could have been 65 years ago.
Yeah.
So I used to pick up that magazine, and basically, unconsciously, I think I was really looking for a solution to my problems. I really wasn't. I was looking, no matter what it was going to take. If somebody told me, listen, be able to stay focused and have better concentration if you go out there and go up the top of the hill here in Toad Hill and start yodeling and barking at the moon, I would have tried it because I was willing to try everything. So that's, in some respects, that was a blessing because I did try everything. I
Hmm.
tried everything. You named it, you name it, I tried it. Long-term water fasting, long-term juice fasting, lifting weights, running, you name it. I tried just about every single thing. Tried just about every type of a diet, and from good food. But basically, one thing I always realized, even in the beginning, I knew real food was the answer
Hmm.
because I saw what happened with me. I saw what happens if I start to eat some, processed carbohydrates. I knew what would happen to me. I just lapsed right back into the problem. It's just like that guy Roger, the boxing coach, Freddie. He says, first of all, you should lose a little bit of weight. He says, I know you're solid as a rock, but you're you should weigh about 165, 170 pounds for what you want to do. You know what I mean? He said, I suggest that you change your diet, he said. And I thought I ate a pretty good diet. So I suggest that he said, you eat fruits, vegetables, and eat a lot of animal protein. So I did exactly what he told me because I realized he was a smart man. He knew what he was, because everything he told me turned out to be true.
Hmm.
And he was a good representation of what he advocated. It was very evident to me. So I did that, and I felt a lot better. Was able to focus more. I was able to, I didn't have all this mental chatter that had me confused all the time. And then, then when I left there and I went aboard ship. I was in a crash crew on an aircraft carrier, and we used to go into. I tried to maintain my diet in the mess hall, which I was able to do pretty good. But we used to go on Liberty. We went to different ports. We were doing the ship did a Mediterranean cruise, and then we went off Korea. We were launching planes into Korea. And so what I did when I used to go ashore, I used to eat, you know, my cultural foods. I would start eating pasta. If I could find some kind of good bread. Believe it or not, there was a couple of Italian restaurants in Yokosuka, Japan, which was pretty amazing. So, and as soon as I ate that, bing, I was right back where I was. Right back. Almost instantly. See, that's why I'm so extreme about what you leave out. What you leave out is so important. Moderation is not the key to success. Moderation is the key to capitulation. It's the same thing in everything. It's the same thing in your spiritual beliefs. It's the same thing in your behavior. You get stronger by practicing the right things. If
And
in order to develop absolute faith, you have to practice your belief system. Whatever the premise is behind your belief system, if you practice them, you're going to get stronger and stronger. And then same thing with food. The more as long as you're connecting all the dots, you're getting everything you need. Everything you need, not everything you think you need. You get everything your body really needs. Then the body, through the process of homeostasis, will stabilize itself at its optimal chemistry. You'll get the most out of your gene, your genetic blueprint, and your genetic expression. Genetic expression and genetic blueprint is two completely different things.
What's the difference between those two?
Your genetic blueprint it determines like the shape of your nose, the color
Right.
of your eyes, a lot of things that you're born with. Genetic expression is like epigenetic. In other words, your genes can be the switches and markers outside of a cell that affect the inside of the cell, the DNA. The membrane of the cell is the brain. It's not the inside of the cell. The replication takes place inside the cell. But if you believe something, that's why spiritual beliefs are so important, because I know the thoughts you entertain become a reality. The spiritual beliefs, the thoughts you entertain, triggers the switches and markers that let the information through the membrane of the cell into a cell. And each cell is like they're a replica of what we are. Each cell takes in nourishment and gives off waste, basically carbonic acid. That's where inflammation begins, by the way. So I personally believe that 85 or more percentage of our disease comes from our lifestyle. And it comes from two places where it starts from. In general, it starts from your brain. Your thinking and choices that you make can lead to destruction. It has an influence on your emotionally, psychological, how much fear you have. Because when you have absolute faith, you don't have fear. You just lose it. It just goes away. Because you believe in the divine, you believe there's something to come. That was one of the main reason I got into prayer and meditation. There's enough of my health. In fact, I had a brother that was a real bright guy. He thought I was out of my mind. He says, "You're the healthiest guy I know. What are you doing all this for?" He says, "You're losing weight."
When you were fasting and experimenting with your diet.
Well, I already started before that. But when I started fasting, nobody in my family knew anything about fasting. Nobody around me. All the guys I hung out with.
That's what's fascinating to me. I think most people around the world didn't know about that, unless maybe you go to the East or something. Yeah.
They thought it was just another continuation of my childhood problems growing up.
It was very courageous. It was a big leap of faith. I mean, because you went against everything that anyone ever told you, or anyone ever told any of us.
Mike, listen, I'm not going to say it was courageous, because on my case, it really wasn't.
Because you were so confident in what you were doing?
No, I wasn't so confident. I was looking, unconsciously, I look back now, I didn't care what happened. Mm-hmm. I might have been looking to get out of here. I don't really know. I know when I went to the service, if they had told me to charge down the barrel of a cannon with the bullet coming out, I probably would have did it. So I don't want to say it was courageous. But you know what? And plus, I must say it was tenacious. The first couple times, when the first couple fasts I did, the most amazing things happened to me. I mean, biological healing. The symptoms of water fasting are not like juice fasting. When you're doing a juice fast or juice diet, the juices, they're neutralizing the endogenous toxins. They're just like the antidote before the poison. But when you're doing a water fast, by my second or third water fast, I knew I developed my own way of fasting.
And how long were you fasting for when you did them?
The first time I did a couple short fasts. I don't really remember how many, 2 or 3, like 15-day fast, maybe 12, 15, 18 days.
On water?
Yeah, on water.
Yeah.
Then I decided to do I was going to do a long water fast. And I didn't know how long I was going to do. I was going to do it one day at a time. So I started fasting, and I lost a lot of weight. And there was a point there I went, within a matter of a couple of years, I lost 70 pounds, so, and I kept experimenting, trying different things. And what happened is that the first time I went was 44 days. And
that was your first water fast?
No, that was the first.
Oh, the first long
fast.
one. Oh, okay, I was gonna say that's courageous, but okay.
By the second, but I start to get wise. I realized that when you lay down, when you close your eyes, you're conserving. I estimate about 40% of your energy. For your brain to evaluate what the eyes are visualizing takes a lot of your energy. Mm-hmm. So if you lay down and close your eyes, instead of losing a pound a day, you would lose, in the beginning, you lose a half a pound a day. Then as time goes on, your body is infinite wisdom, and you don't move around, you're consuming less calories. You're utilizing less of your own body tissue. See, that's where a lot of people are making a mistake today about juice fasting. Like when somebody shot him an email, a woman from University of, she was a professor in UCLA. She said that juice fasting is not safe because you're not getting the fat and the protein you need. Well, she missed the whole point.
Yeah, it's the point to not get the fat and the protein.
That's the point.
Yeah.
You're utilizing the most morbid material first. That's what cleans you up. Your body, if it's into wisdom, it'll clean up your bowels. It'll start to target tomb, cyst, and Rens. It'll go after all the stuff. It has a priority. It'll take the poorest fat and protein in your system, and it'll start to utilize that. It will not go. You don't go into starvation till your body starts to utilize your muscle tissue, and then it'll go to your organs. Then you're dying, But that doesn't happen. I remember once that I used to look at my ribs, where the serratus magnus are. I could tell by looking at myself if I had how many days I have. I could guess pretty closely, like when I had 10, 15, 20 days. So then as I said before, basically, I was on a journey of I was very inquisitive. And I realized, there was a point I realized I really wasn't quite as dopey as I thought, that I had a pretty analytical mind, because I had nobody helping me. I really didn't do a lot of reading, to be honest with you. And there was a lot of confusion. There's nothing new out there today. It's the same old recycled information. There's nothing new about fruitarianism and all. I saw guys die from fruitarianism, literally. I had a friend of mine, Frank, got him.
You told me about a guy that was on a fruitarian diet that you met that had really clear skin. He looked good, but he had no teeth in his mouth.
Yeah, he had no teeth, right. Yeah, that's the guy I'm talking. His name was Frank. He was the guy that basically got me interested in raw foods, And he was a fabulous guy.
He was from Staten Island too?
Staten Island.
Wow.
He was an absolute gentleman. Originally, he came from Manhattan, and he used to bring me bowls of fruit and everything. And when I first started talking to him, I was like a gorilla. He was saying, Freddie, that's not a good way to go and everything. And I respected him because I saw he had unbelievable energy. See, whenever you're working hard or exercising hard, you're eating a lot of fruit, you're going to have tremendous energy. I mean, you're just high. I mean, it's euphoric because I did that. I knew what that felt like. I mean, I used to have to see if my feet were touching the ground when I was running. That's euphoria. I mean, it really is. I even did it with honey. I took some days where I lived on honey.
You would just eat honey for the day.
Right, and I would just run though. I would just do a tremendous amount of training. My wife could tell you a story. My mother-in-law was living with us, and this was after I was married because I already knew you could do this. So I was doing some more experimenting with the fruit and everything like that. And we had a deck in the back. We had like 15 stairs up and down the deck. And my mother-in-law wasn't feeling well, and I was help taking care of her. And I used to stay home as much as I could. So I said, you know what? I think I'll just drink fruit juices for the next 5-6 days. Now, fruit juice, I don't encourage people to drink fruit juices because people could have problems. But all I did was run up and down those stairs. So one day I said, let me see. I'm going to drink fruit juices. I have the fruit juice. I'm going to run up and down the stairs. Well, I started running up and down those stairs. I ran at least 6 or 7 hours without stopping. Just come in, drink some fruit juice, go back and go out. So you can do those things. It's not conducive.
The stairs in your house? You ran up and down them for 6 or 7 hours?
Exactly. It's my wife. So the funny part about it is my mother-in-law, when my wife came home, my mother-in-law says, Alma, I think there's something wrong with Freddie. He's been running up and down the stairs all day.
On orange juice or something.
So, I'm not encouraging people to do things like this. This is how I got a lot of knowledge. But of course, I was also had a pile. After when my life got together, I realized I had a very good memory. I could learn things very rapidly. You started
to think more clearly after fasting. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not only that, I found what I was. The 38th day, I usually don't talk about this openly, but I'm not in a hold back. I was the 38th day into my one of my fasts, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget. I looked at the clock. And I had definitely had some kind of a divine experience because from that moment on, I was a different guy.
And what happened in that moment?
Well, I had a spiritual revelation, you know.
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't get a phone call from the big guy. The phone didn't ring and said, "Hello, Freddie. This is God. I want to talk to you." No, I just knew that it was a very powerful experience, and I knew exactly what it was, and that just confirmed what I had read. There were 72 places in the Bible that said to fast and pray if you want to get closer to God. So I said, "Yeah, I'd like to get closer to God." And this seems like a pretty simple way to do it. For me, it was a simple way because I liked fasting at the time anyway. And then the more you fast as time goes on, you just you can just it's not hard at all. If as long as you know what to do, it's to lay down, close your eyes, look at how much reserve you had, how much you really reserves you have, and you could be skinny and have plenty of reserves. People don't realize that. I'm a skinny guy right now. I got plenty of reserve. I know I do. Even at my age. But uh, I might do something like that again. I thought I wasn't going to do anything like that again because of my experience I had last year. But you can't be. See, the thing is, most the average person that's on a standard American diet, you have to um, you have to realize that the limitations that most people are imposing upon themselves are not the real limitations that nature and wisdom imposes upon the human body. The human body is a heroic piece of machinery. It's fabulous. And are we using our bodies to its full capacity? No. And living in this environment now, what's happened to us, how we're swimming through a polluted environment, everything around us we're not aware of. Can we survive it? Yeah, but you got to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, Gil
And
and I were talking about that last time, where it used to be, or at least we perceived it to be 20 years ago or more. You could say, okay, well, this person wants to eat poorly or smoke cigarettes or drink a lot of alcohol, do whatever they do. And it's like, okay, that's your life. This is my life. But now, because of the chemical toxicity of the industrial
yeah,
society,
well,
it's
Gil's right.
yeah.
It's pretty hard to escape all this, but that's why it's critical. See, a lot of people when they get into eating a good diet and they go through biological healing and in the beginning, and they think that's the hard. It's not. The hard part is when you get older. The hard part comes as you get cleaner and you're more sensitive to what's in our environment. You're more sensitive to things like those cell towers and cell phones and things and dirty electricity and the wrong type of food. That's why I I encourage people to develop parameters of their diet and stay within them because you won't realize when you're bouncing in and out of your parameters what you're doing to yourself. Like now, so many times I'm with people and they say, Freddie, why don't break loose once in a while, have something to eat. And I just avoid that. They don't realize that I can't. I would feel so bad so fast, not because I'm weaker, it's because I'm cleaner. Doesn't mean that, you're stronger. If you're cleaner, you might not have physical strength unless you're creating resistance for the human body. But that's what develops you. That's how you develop, elevated consciousness and spiritual consciousness. One of the there's a lot of people in churches today. If you tell them that you could actually develop get a more of a godly relationship by eating cleaner, they think that's blasphemy. It's not. It's a reality. Just think about it. That's the way we were designed. If you believe in, that we are designed to live a specific way according to natural law, which we are. I mean, if you just look at all the other natural laws, I mean, you're not jumping out of a plane and say, I'm a parakeet and jump out of a plane and think you're going to defy gravity, the gravitational pull of the earth. It's not going to happen. Well, there's more sensitive things taking place in the human body, the way our organs work, the way our brain works. Human body's made up of trillions of cells. Nobody really knows how many cells, and each cell is made up of trillions of atoms, and it's an electrical system. And if the minerals are a language between cells, each cell in your body is communicating with other cells. But we are in such a fog. We are so anesthetized.
Yeah, it's my, and you had asked me a number of times over the years. I remember you would say, "How are you feeling? Are you burnt out? Are you burnt out?" Just from working with people, and you'd ask me that often, every now and again. And I wanted to talk to you about that today. There is this certain way, and you've done this because you still see clients, and
Yeah, I do.
it's been almost 50 years of people. And the biggest challenge that I find, I've only really been working, I mean, I was a chef before I was a health practitioner, but I've only really been working as a health practitioner for 11, 12 years now. Um, but one of the biggest challenges is the mind, especially when working with cleaning up a diet. It's, I put a post on Facebook not too long ago about how funny it is, how suddenly it becomes very complicated. As soon as someone wants to get healthy, suddenly it's very complicated. It's like, oh, juice. Oh, now I got to make time for that. Do I have to buy this? What if I'm not getting it? All of a sudden, there's all this whole map of stuff that needs to get connected. But when it was time to eat the cheese fries at 3 a.m. at the diner, like, no, but there's no complications.
Yeah.
People just did that. But it's a complicated place, especially working with raw foods and working against the addictive properties of all the foods that we were raised on. And it's like, it's basically just math. Otherwise, stop doing this and you'll get this result. But like, the challenge is the mind. How do you stay inspired with that? I mean, it is frustrating.
Well, I know that, all my experiences life and consulting with people and all the people that I've met and all the people that I've had in my life that I were quality people, I know that your mind, actually, what I'm trying to say is right now, my spiritual beliefs, my mind is far more important than my diet. Once you get control of your thoughts and we understand epigenetics and you have a belief system and you live within that belief system, everything becomes so much easier. When I really got control of my diet is when I really became a spiritual person, because I lost, a lot of my lust. You lose your lust for food, your lust for a lot of things. Your body, you become stable in the way it was supposed to be. It's like, I remember when I was a young kid and working out the weights, and even though I ate a good diet, I was 18, 19 years old, and I ate the animal protein, and and I was subject to the ways of the world. I mean, I realized that I was probably functioning more like an animal than a highly evolved human being. Same thing with sexuality. When you're living that way, when you're a kid and you're eating that type of a diet, you're eating plenty of protein in spite of the fruits and vegetables, your libido is through the roof. That's the only thing that's on your mind all the time. But when you become a spiritual person and you're kind of surrendering control and you're leaving a spiritual life, through prayerful meditation, and you're eating a diet that's low in protein, right? And basically, I believe in eating a vegan diet. What happens? Then your body stabilizes and goes where it was meant to be. That's why so many of these people today are taking bioidentical hormones, and a lot of guys are on Viagra because they overdrew their bank account. But once you become, spiritually grounded and grounded in your diet and grounded in how you think, how you're using your mind, what happens is that you become the way we were supposed to be. You're not a praying, as a man, you're not a praying lion, looking for prey. That's what's going on today. That's the way it is with the way the world is sexually. People are just preying on each other. How much, actually, it's, if you have a loving relationship, you have a deeper loving relationship. Sexual contact is the fulfillment of a deep loving relationship. People are doing all kinds of things to have this mind-boggling experiences, with their sexuality. You don't have to do all those things. All you have to do is have a loving relationship where you truly care about somebody. Then you're gonna see the joy that really comes from a physical contact.
I think that we were just talking about getting grounded spiritually through food, and I've always thought about food as being the most, or food and lifestyle, or any chemistry that we're affecting our body with. But food is really the most intimate relationship that we have with the planet and the outside environment. It's even more intimate than sex in a lot of times, with the exception of when sex results in a child, because that's the only time that you actually take something into you and grow something and create life, especially for the woman. But food, we're interacting with the world, we're taking it in, we're making ourselves part of the environment. And you said something really interesting before about natural law. You would say, and it's a very simple way of thinking about it. Like, if you jump out of an airplane, you're not going to become a parakeet.
No.
right? If you said that to any person on the planet, they would go, all right, yeah, no kidding. But if you say, if you think you're going to eat chocolate brownies every day for breakfast, you're not going to suddenly be able to.
It's not
But
going to work.
nobody can connect those
No,
dots. They can't. I don't
they
understand.
don't connect it.
That's the
Well,
struggle with.
because they're putting their feelings. But you see, when you develop wisdom, and you don't have to be a great genius to develop wisdom. When you develop wisdom, you start to get a clear picture of the basic truth that how we're supposed to live. That's what happened to me anyway. So right now, life is very clear for me that how I should live my life. And even at this point in my life, there, I'm 84 years old, and probably, most likely I'm in the twilight of my life. It's very understanding, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just one day after another, one day at a time, to not to settle for mediocrity, to strive for highest ideals, to be the most that you can be, to help other people and to help yourself, and to be able to shine some kind of a positive light out into the world. Because the world, right out now, we're looking out there right now. It's daylight out there, but this world is full of darkness, and people living the standard American lifestyle on a standard American diet, on standard American diet. They're living a life of basically they're not seeing, my opinion anyway. They're not seeing what life really is here. Once you experience its real truth is basic simplicity in itself. It's so simple. Once we start, our ego gets into the game, and we start to, be condescending about who we are and what we know, and then you're on the wrong track, going in the wrong direction, as far as I'm concerned.
You had told me once. You said that you said we were living in a fallen world, but you said it's meant to be that way.
It is.
And because it's really a vehicle to awakening, right? I mean, if I weren't living in a fallen world, I wouldn't have had all the experiences I had and got into nutrition the way I did and had the spiritual experiences I had. Probably not the same for you either.
No.
So it served us very well. But the world is supposed to be broken in a sense, is what you were trying to say. That's the whole
Well,
point.
all I could say is I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I believe God took me and gave me a little insight into what's going on here. And it's like planting a seed, and somebody watered that seed. There's people that water seeds in your life, and I'm very conscious of that. And I told you about that story. I'm a little hesitant about sharing this. I mean, I seen things that, just I believe God put them in my life, you know, for me to learn something, to change. I saw a woman that had an abortion. The child survived. I saw that child when he was an adult. I mean, I saw that with my own eyes. I saw guys that were basically good people die. I saw people that were basically good people because they went down the wrong road, become criminals.
And at one point, you were sort of picked to be or invited into one of the crime families.
I was going out with a girl that I could have went in that direction. It wasn't for me though. I knew that. I didn't want to go there. Guy told me if I went to work for him, he says, you're a pretty smart guy, and he says, you got. He says, I think you got the castañas. I think you could do this. I said, yeah, not for me. He says, it's not hard. You just have to do something, and it's not hard. And I said, not for me, though. Thank you.
I think you make a much better godfather of raw food. I think that's how you're known in the circles. The godfather of raw food. Peter Savoni and I joke around about that all the time.
Well, Mike, in all honesty, at this point in my life, I look, and I say to myself, God has me here for a reason. And I believe that he's given me a little bit of a gift, and a gift is something you're supposed to give away. You're not supposed to keep it, Otherwise, it wouldn't really be a true gift. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. My legacy is the legacy I want to leave behind is the legacy of my experience and what I've done and what I learned through education. Because I spent my whole life studying and going to school. And a lot of it, I realized, a lot of it comes from my own study, my own experience. I found out head knowledge without experience is not really is not wisdom.
It's not complete.
It's not complete. So what I found out is that that's why I did everything. I mean, went over, fasted on juices, well over 100 days, numerous times, and uh, I did a 7-day dry fast, not through my own choice. It was kind of a very unusual experience.
7 days without food and water.
Yeah, right. And I did that. I actually did it in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a hospital when that happened.
And how did that feel to you when you were doing that?
Well, I think I had a very unusual experience last year. About a year ago, I had some food went into my airway, and I got aspirational pneumonia.
Right, right.
And it just wasn't getting better. And I'm very rarely ever sick in over 50 years. And so I went into a hospital, and the doctor says, we have to test you, see if you have aspirational pneumonia. As soon as he said that, I knew I had it. And he says, you can't eat, you can't drink any water. So I thought it was for a couple of days. And I said, gee, these people, they know about dry fasting. Not too people really know that dry fasting, it's not going to damage your kidneys if you know what you're doing. A lot of people think it's going to destroy your kidneys if you're not drinking water. Of course, you can't go long on it, and you better know what you're doing. I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything like that.
Now, how long could somebody go dry fasting? I mean, I wouldn't even think that 7 days someone could go dry fasting, but...
Well, I mean, it's a fact, that people witness that. Rory, my buddy, saw me do it.
But how long normally can somebody go without food and water?
Well, according to Sergei, the Russian doctor, Sergei Falaninov, I think his last name is, and he says the record is 18 days. I don't know. I wouldn't want to see anybody try that. I've seen a couple people that, guy from Florida try it, and he ended up in a hospital in New York, and he started to hallucinate. So I'm not recommending any of this stuff.
Well, this was out of necessity because you were in the hospital.
Well, I almost died, It was very close.
As a result of that dry fast, or you mean
No,
as a
no,
result
as a result of the aspirational, the food going into my airway.
Mm-hmm.
If the food goes into the airway, it's going to rot. You're going to get pneumonia.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to a lot of people. I mean, I knew about aspirational pneumonia, and I got a very small throat. I could choke very, very, very easy. And I had a speech therapist examine me in the hospital. And I knew that every time I ate, I would start coughing violently. So I just stopped eating. But I wasn't really thinking clearly because I would have knew what to do. You know what I mean? So the doctor said, we're not going to, don't eat, you can't eat, and we don't want you to drink water, you can't even chew any ice. So I was dopey from being so sick. Otherwise, I would have asked them if they knew what they were doing.
Now, were they trying to cure you with the dry fast, or they were trying to...
No. They were just waiting me to give me the special test.
I see.
They took me down. They made me swallow some crackers. Rory saw it to see if the food was going down. Of course, I was gonna do it because I knew what I was doing. I lost some teeth over here, so due to a mistake. If I knew what I know now, I would have all my original teeth and everything. I knew where I made my mistakes. So what happened is that finally, after I told this doctor, listen, this is it. I'm going to eat. I said, right. I said, what about my kidneys here? And he said, oh, you got healthy kidneys. I said, yeah, I want to keep them that way. So that was that. But I did 7 days. Now, one day in the middle of the week, they couldn't give me the intravenous sodium because my legs had blew up like balloons. I reacted to everything they did. In the process of saving my life, they almost killed me. No two ways about it. Anybody knows what happened, knows the story. To me, that was another learning experience. I learned so much about what can happen to a guy like me by going into a hospital. I escaped by the skin of my teeth. Mm-hmm. So I know that. And I understand every single thing that happened to me.
And by a guy like you mean someone that has done such internal cleansing where medicine sort of gets more risky than it even is for the average person.
Well, it's like ODing,
Yeah.
You OD on something. What's normal is overdose for me. Uh-huh. I'm very careful.
And doctors work with general population, so they're working in certain parameters for the average person. They've probably never seen a chemistry like yours if you go into a hospital. Yeah.
Well, when I was in a hospital, I know, the doctors used to come in, and I studied medicine. I know quite a bit about medical procedures and how to read tests and all that type of stuff. And I was, they really didn't have an answer for some of my questions. Because we were on parallel roads, And of course, I'm not poo-pooing doctors or medical science. I'm a big fan of science. I study a lot of science. But the whole thing is that this reductionism healthcare that we're living by today is
Leaves a bit to
it's
be
a
desired,
charade.
doesn't it?
It's a charade, is what it really is.
Hmm.
I mean, all people, but all this, all the nutraceuticals and all the supplements out there, and all of they're taking foods and breaking them down to all these different vitamins. That's just another form of programming. If you're eating whole foods, eat a right of whole foods, you don't break down. Reductionism doesn't work because that's a proven fact. If you eat a bad diet and take all kinds of supplements, you might feel better temporarily from the synthesized chemicals that they're giving you as vitamins, but you're not going to get the same quality of life if you eat a whole food diet. Whole foods, you get everything you need. That's it, and leave out the processed food. That's it. That's a master's degree in nutrition right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you got to know.
It's really that simple.
It is that simple. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I studied all these things for years to find out the simplicity of it, and half the study was a waste of time.
I say that I've said that to clients over the years. I say, I'll tell them what to do, and then they're looking at me blankly, and I say, yes, you're paying me $125 an hour to tell you to drink juice and to eat salad. And they look at me and I go, but are you doing it? No. Okay, well then you're paying me to tell you to do it again because it's not sinking in. But yeah, it really is that simple.
But that's where listen, I could teach my dog how to give a nutritional consultation. The key is, how are you going to convince people to change? How are you going to get beyond their emotions, their psychology, their addictions, their programming? We're programmed. We're gerbils running on a treadmill. We're running on a roller. We're pumping that roller. Inside that roller, there's an economy that lives off our misery, our sickness, pharmaceutical companies, some of the medical profession, some of these double-blind studies. Some of these double-blind studies are ridiculous. They have no validity.
Yeah, somebody on Facebook had asked me. He's a personal trainer, and he's into like what we're into, and he's into a vegan diet. So he gets angry about all these other trainers that post these things. So he said, Mike, could you take a look at this guy's? Could you take a look at this guy's blog? He's writing a blog about why we need to eat meat and a vegan diet doesn't work. It's okay, so let me take a look at it. So I look at the guy's thing, and he was a medical student. So he put all of his, he cited all of his references and everything perfectly because he's a student. He's a medical student. So I went to the websites where where the references were pulled from. It was PubMed and Medscape. There are two websites that publish medical studies. So I looked at this. I looked at the studies, and I'm reading them. Okay, well done studies. I didn't necessarily agree with them. And on the same websites, I decided to do a search. And I just put the word vegan in, and I found the same studies, and I found studies that promoted a vegan diet, all on the same website. So you can't really look at studies, double-blind, any of that. You could cherry pick any information that you want to prove your point. Not that some studies are, they do. Some studies are valuable. They can teach us something, but they contradict each other all over the place.
Oh.
Yeah, and people would be doing these studies, Fred. We put this group of people, 6 people on a vegan diet for 3 weeks, and like they're trying to take measurements and stuff, and I'm like, well, 3 weeks.
What they're really measuring half the times when you get into a protein deficiency is biological healing. Yeah. It's like measuring somebody that's smoking crack when they start to feel sick. That you're measuring a crack.
You measure their vitality, right?
Crack, right. Yeah. But listen, on the same token, I don't want to mislead people. Listen, there are people that are on vegan diets. After long term, they can fall into a B12 deficiency. Mm-hmm. If you're not doing a vegan raw food diet correctly, you can fall into a protein deficiency. You can fall into a trace mineral deficiency. You can fall into a B12 deficiency. If you're doing it intelligently, it's not going to happen. So, and if you've been a vegan, if you've, been a vegan a long time and the normal range of B12 is 200 to 1100 picograms per milliliter. So if you're down around 200, you might want to take a B12. But so what? It's a trade-off. You don't want to live according to a philosophy. You want to be the most that you possibly can. You don't want to settle for mediocrity. You don't want to live up to some preconceived image that a lot of people that are misinformed have out there. There's nothing wrong if you have to take a B12. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I take them.
Look It's a trade-off. For these people eating a high-protein diet, you're far better off. And listen, I see some people eat a minimal amount of clean animal protein that are healthy in the context of a plant-based diet. That's not my choice, though. But everybody has a right to make their own choice. A lot of people come to me, they don't want to be vegetarians or vegans. And as long as they give up all the processed food, get all the chemicals out of there, I think there's a spiritual dimension there that you have to experience for yourself. But if you are a vegan and after 30 years and your B12 falls down under 200 picograms per milliliter or even under 400 and you have to take the pill, you don't go back to eating meat. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I just don't, you know.
It's interesting when most people find that they need to go back to eating animal food. I'm just talking about the client base that I've worked with over the years. Usually people can maintain a 95% vegan diet and eat a few, if they wanted to, eat some animal food. They could just eat their salmon or their whatever, but people don't do that. They like it. They eat like meat 3 times a day suddenly. And I'm just like, what are you doing? And then they usually have lots of issues.
It is. Once you get out of the chemistry of natural law, don't forget your hypothalamus gland is right above the optic nerve of your eye and the floor of your brain. It controls your sex drive, your hunger drive, and your food addiction. It's just as strong as your hunger drive and your sex drive. People just don't realize it. It's right up there.
Mm-hmm.
And it has, and plus, it also it's a nerve center. It also controls your body clock and your circadian rhythms. Your body clock and circadian rhythms are critically important to your well-being. That's why people eat it late at night, eat in the middle of the night, eat before the sun comes up. They're thrown off. Your circadian rhythms run on a 24-hour cycle, 24 hours, a little over 24 hours and 8 minutes. The more that gets out of whack, you keep adding time on to that 24 hours, 8 minutes, 24 hours and 16 minutes, 24 hours and 32 minutes, and so on, the more your chemistry is all messed up. Your emotions, mentally, spiritually, and if circadian rhythms affect us, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, chemistry, everything. And it's so critically important. Why the latest study shows that, in fact, if you're watching television now, you're going to see an ad on television. They got a new medicine to control your circadian rhythms.
Do they really?
Yeah,
now?
Because what they do is they know people that are stone cold blind, that can't see daylight, they have 70% more health issues because they can't see light.
Is that right?
Watch television. It's coming up now. So what do? They don't tell people, don't eat after dark. Don't eat, because you don't want to be secreting cortisol at 9 o'clock at night and melatonin at 10 o'clock in the morning, because that's all controlled by your body clock and circadian rhythms. And that's what's happening.
And this is what jet lag is for people that don't understand circadian
That's what
rhythm.
jet lag is.
Yeah, you're taking yourself out of your rhythm, putting it into yourself very quickly into a new time zone. And
that's why people come to me. They're working a night shift. I say to myself, "Oh, this is not going to be easy," because now, if somebody's not functioning at a higher level, they won't even notice. They don't notice. When you're walking around eating a standard American diet and doing all the standard American type of things, and don't get me wrong, when I use that term, this is the greatest country. Well, I love this country, but I wish it was, I don't like some of the things that are going on, some of the corruption, misguided values, and, it's all about money. It's not really about, people. I think eventually, that we're going to get to be where, people are going to be controlling what's going on. I think we're on that road, where people are going to naturally going to want to have more to say. We're programmed. We're like sheep. Most people, you're driving a car, you're living in a nice apartment. You say, well, I got a good life. I got food on my table. I can read the books I want. That's the way they want it. They want you to be reasonably happy. They want you to be anesthetized. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist either. I just know that, power and money is what controls the world.
What would you say the best diet is for expanded consciousness and elevated thinking, then, to raise the vibrational energy of somebody and their way of thinking?
It's a vegan diet, as raw or as much raw as you possibly can.
And do you believe that a vegan diet is the natural diet of humanity, or do you think it's a manipulation that works in our favor?
I believe that, don't forget, I'm a spiritual guy, so I believe it's the best diet spiritually, because you see a lot of monks that live this way and they eat one meal a day at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. They meditate, they pray, And even some of the like the Shaolin monks that are best fighters in the world, I mean, they're awesome. They could beat anybody, but that's the basic principles behind the way they live. You know, unconditional love, kindness, generosity, and a lot of people think they believe in violence because of what they, especially like those iron shirt Shaolin monks.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe that, but you don't. They know the nature of the world. You know, like a samurai warrior, all these type of people. They know the nature that this is a fallen world, and you know, when it says in the scriptures the meek will inherit the earth, you're not talking about being a sacrificial lamb that we should go out and let people run right over us. You know what I'm saying? So the key is you have to be strong mentally, and you have to try to be strong physically also. And but the utmost thing is to be strong spiritually. But if you're eating a lot of processed food, I'm not saying you can't, that if you're eating a lot of processed food, eating a lot of processed meat, that you can't have, a spiritual relationship with God, because that's a matter of choice. But if you eat this type of the type of diet we're talking about, to have elevated consciousness where your mind will open up based on the purity of your bloodstream, which nurtures your brain and your spirit, and you have a broader vision of what's really happening here. To understand that this world is synergistic, that everything is connected. Everything is connected in here. When you do this, especially through fasting, you start to see the real connections, the connections to us and animal lives. You look at, just to look at a worm on the ground. When I look at a worm on the ground, I look at a worm, I say, that's another form of life. God created that worm. That worm has its own reality that we're totally unaware of, what that reality is. But that worm has a reality. Every animal has its own reality. And there's certain animals that live, of course, this is a fallen world. There's certain animals that will eat other animals. But we're cerebral animals. We're not instinctual animals. That's why I don't want to eat another animal. I don't want to eat my dog. I got a dog. I like that dog. Would I eat that dog? Would I eat that dog if it was a question of survival? Now, people are going to think this is crazy. No, I would not eat that dog as a question of survival.
Well, I agree. I wouldn't eat an
It's like,
animal
to me,
either.
that would be like eating another person. Not going to happen. And the choice I would make is that I would take the exit door. Now, people say that's crazy. No, it's not crazy, because the exit door for me, in my mind, is not the end. See, people say, oh, that's ridiculous. No, it's not ridiculous. That's what I believe. So what you believe empowers you, gives you the strength to do these things. It takes strength to do a lot of things. And what gives you the real strength, when you're in pain, when you're suffering, it's very easy to let go and do something that's wrong, or do something for survival. But when you're spiritually, mentally strong, it gives you tremendous physical strength, where you don't let go. And where you could go, another 5 minutes, another minute. If anybody's ever been in intense pain.
I went through a process, Fred. I think I told you about this process. It was part of a camp that I went to. I even took my son to this camp. We went through this process where they wanted to have you experience just that. Mm-hmm. And basically, I won't describe the details of it, but basically, I got broken down physically over and over and over and over again through the course of hours. Mm-hmm. And every single time I thought that I couldn't go another step, I would be in such extreme pain. The goal of the exercise was to go further, and it's right. Amazing how fast you can go when
how far you can go.
Yeah, when you really start to, because the body was shot. My body was in exceptional pain. It was destroyed, but my mind kept everything going.
Yeah. Well, what do you think they do with Navy SEALs?
Right.
That's why only 10% of the people make it. They're exceptional guys. But the thing is that if you could live, when you're in extreme pain, if you can. You realize you have to go second to second or minute to minute. If you say, I don't know if I can be doing this 6 hours later, that means you already surrendered, you're finished. Mm-hmm. And that's, when I was going through, when I went from eating raw foods to, when I was I looked like a pipe cleaner or a toothpick. If I focused on, there was a period when I was doing all that fasting, when I looked in the mirror, I looked like a cadaver. You could count all my ribs. You could play the piccolo on my ribs. Now, anybody would say that was insanity.
And were you married at the time?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
So I was gonna say
I did some of that when I was married. My wife got very frightened. I did something for 8 years. I wouldn't even go into that one. That's an unbelievable experience.
Next time you come back to the show, though, I might try to pull that story out of you.
Oh, that was a story. Well, that's
I know
what
that story.
my wife pleaded with me. She says, Freddie, I can't take this no more. She says, I don't understand what you're doing, why you're trying to do this. I said, to me, it's an adventure. You have to understand. I have an inquiring mind. And because I think from where I started from, that I had poor self-esteem, I'm never satisfied with my own performance. I'm never satisfied with what I learned. I said, wow, I learned this. What's the next step? What comes next,
Well, she must love that.
Nah, she's not. I got very lucky. I'm married to a good, but she's not like me. She doesn't want to be like me, which I understand. That's my journey. She got a lot of attributes that I don't have and that are much better than what I do have. She's got a joy of life that's amazing. Everybody that knows that about her.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned earlier that your mom had a tremendous singing voice, and I thought, well, you married a woman with a tremendous singing voice too.
Yeah.
Alma can sing.
I give a lot of credit that she put up with the kind of guy I am. You know what I mean? I'm probably like a robot. You know what I mean? I think I have to do something, and I do it. It's that simple, and I don't stop till I either get it to accomplish it. If I realize that it can be done. And she's not that type of person. She says, she thinks, why you have to be so hard on yourself? I said, I'm not hard on myself. I love this journey that I'm on. I like it. And I'm, this is the way I'm going to be till the day I leave this place.
I think this is the way you're going to be, period.
I'm going to be this way. That's the way I am.
We had talked about sort of the state of humanity before we started talking about your wife and fasting. And you have this epic quote, one of the most amazing quotes I've ever heard from you. And it's in the back of your book. So I'm just going to read it here for a second. The human condition is spiritually and vibrationally induced, electrically and chemically empowered, and biologically carried out. I've never heard anything more profound and
I believe that
precise.
100%.
I mean, just to sum up the entire condition. And the fascinating thing the reason I thought of this while we were talking earlier is that, when you were last weekend, you had given a talk at the Jews Press, and you had talked about how, the biological aspect of ourselves, our bodies are at the bottom of the paradigm, yet they all affect each other. Because all I did was and it sounds like from what you had said too, all that I did when I went through my detox and transformational experience, that I wasn't setting off to have a detox and transformational experience, but that's what occurred. When I started changing what I ate and I stopped drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes and using drugs,
profound.
What happened to me at the top of the paradigm, spiritually, was like I didn't expect it. That wasn't my goal. I didn't set off with any intention of that, but it was incredible. So they all really affect each other. So I guess it's no wonder why people are so, why we're having such struggles around food and things like that, because it's probably the easiest thing to work with. And we almost need it. But it's funny because we need to straighten that out in order to elevate our minds, but we need our minds in order to master these issues with the bottom of the paradigm.
Well, you reach that point is where when conscience starts speaking louder than nonsense, most people are listening to nonsense. But when your body gets clean, your conscience, the nature of truth, will speak louder than nonsense.
Well, Fred, this was really cool talking to you today. Thank you for coming on. I hope you're going to come back and we'll do this again.
Absolutely, come back anytime.
I may pull that story out of you. I may ask you to bring some old cool pictures of you back in the day. Yeah.
I'll tell that story. I have a couple other stories that I don't want to be too revealing to get anybody else in trouble, because a lot of people have changed, So I don't want to tell some stories about people that, so might get in trouble, or guy's wife might hear something that.
Oh boy, really?
No good. But it's been fun, Mike. I really enjoyed it, and I love all you guys. It's good to have a lot of friends out there. My wife says, Freddie, you have, you got all these friends you got. They're all young guys and everything. I said, well, all the guys that I had friends, they're gone, and I can relate to young people. And I think like the young people kind of look at me as an older man that I'm still in the mix of things. I'm still in the game out there. So I don't think they really factor my age into the equation that much as that a lot of people think they would do, because I can, I keep up with people and do what I have to do. So well,
You
live
know,
one day at a time. Live life to the fullest. Live life to the fullest. Live like there's no tomorrow without hurting anybody. You don't live ridiculously, but live life to the fullest. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Put yesterday behind you, which I always had a hard time doing, and just never settle for mediocrity. Be the most that you can be today, and tomorrow's a new day. Be the most you can be tomorrow, and tomorrow, like, make that this day the best day ever, and be kind to people, and that's it.
no, thank you so much. You've been very kind to me over the years, and thank you for coming on the podcast. Guys, get over to everydaydetox.org. Sign up for the newsletter to find out when we're going to have more podcasts and when more videos are coming out. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.